What's up, space pirates? This is your Admiral, the happily hostile Dr. Disaster. And a big happy Easter to everyone out there who celebrates, and to everyone else, well, I still have a bit of an Easter present to hook you up with, because boy oh boy, does it look like Doctor Who is just well and truly cooked.
We're doomed! Doomed, I tell ya!
Last week was the worst overnight ratings to an episode of Doctor Who in the history of the show. We are still waiting on the 7-day figures for Robot Revolution, that first episode. But in the meantime, we have even worse news for the show. The overnight numbers for the second episode plummeted from what we saw in that first episode. And as someone who has been here pounding my fist on the table for a while now, saying that Doctor Who needed to change or be destroyed, well, suffice to say, my overdeveloped sense of schadenfreude is really enjoying this. And not only is the show falling apart faster than the story of a celebrity space trip in its home country, but here in the United States, the show continues to completely underperform as well. Disney has reportedly dropped something in the ballpark of $10 to $15 million per episode while bankrolling Doctor Who, and not a single one of the episodes from season 1 made the top 10 on the Nielsen TV show list. And it looks like that trend is going to continue this year as well, because the inaugural episode of the second season is nowhere to be found on the top 10 most streamed list for last week.
I'm the champion of failures!
For a show that I've watched for literal decades now, this is a very sad turn of events to see it fall so low, but as fans, it isn't our fault that we are abandoning Doctor Who in droves. They, the makers of the show, have failed to make the Doctor seem like the Doctor in any meaningful way for the better part of a decade now, and they have jumped the shark with their most recent episodes to the point that we look at the show and say, this is now Doctor.
What the hell are you?
Alright, me hearties, make sure you hit the like button on this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and also, please consider supporting the channel by becoming a member. The first part of the novel that I've written, A Dark Fantasy Tale, will be available in audiobook form to members only this coming Friday. The book itself will be available to purchase on Amazon soon, but in the meantime, if you want to support alternatives to mainstream culture, crap like Doctor Who here, which has been hell-bent on altering itself to mirror modern progressive schlock, rather than the storied history of the character itself, well, if you want to support something else, consider becoming a member of this channel for as little as $5 a month. But now, let's talk about Doctor Who. The Radio Times has the story here. The overnight ratings for the second episode of this new season have dropped, and things are looking pretty bleak for the show. The second episode of Doctor Who's 15th season suffered a fairly substantial drop in ratings, with just 1.58 million viewers tuning in to watch Lux on BBC One last night, Saturday the 19th of April. That's down from the 2 million who watched last week's season premiere, The Robot Revolution, and marks the lowest overnight viewership ratings in the show's history. The first time ever that the figures have dipped below 2 million. And then they start making excuses for people watching the show on the BBC iPlayer rather than watching on TV in the traditional way. That seems to be their excuse for why the numbers are so bad. But here's the thing with that. They used that same excuse all of last year to talk about how actually the show is doing super well and everybody loves it. This was supposedly evidence that young people are tuning in because all the young people are watching it on the iPlayer rather than on TV, and this was simply a tool. This excuse was a tool to avoid accountability, which was exactly what they did. They refused, the showrunners for Doctor Who refused to acknowledge that they have alienated massive chunks of people. They denied it vehemently, and yet this little fairy tale of theirs, that there's a huge chunk of the audience watching on the BBC iPlayer, it never materialized. The 7-day figures for last year's Doctor Who, which does account for the BBC iPlayer and other methods of watching the show, those were the worst figures in the history of the show last year. So, these excuses are just worthless. They mean nothing. But what's really amusing to me is the fact that as far as new episodes of Doctor Who goes, this last one actually does seem to have more people than usual actually genuinely enjoying the episode. The percentage score for Rotten Tomatoes for this season of Doctor Who has actually gone up a few points from 46 to 50. But the problem is that even if this was a better episode, which I sincerely doubt it was a significant increase in quality, but even if that was true, it doesn't matter. Too many people are checked out now for it to have any significant effect. They won't be coming back anytime soon. In order to get an idea as to what sort of abysmal 7-day ratings we can expect to see for these latest 2 episodes though, take a look again at these figures. The first episode of this season hit 2 million overnight viewers, and now this next one dropped down to 1.58, which is by far and away the lowest overnights in the history of the show. But this is the list of last year's numbers. Prior to this year, the lowest overnight figures came from the 7th episode of last year, which dropped down to 2.02 million, and that episode ended up netting a total viewership count for the full week of about 3.5 million people. If you look at all main episodes of the season, you will notice a trend. Usually, the 7-day figures take the overnight figure and they add on another 50 to 75% of that overnight number, and that ends up being the total viewership for the show for the full week. But what happens if we assume best case scenario for this latest episode and they add 75% of that overnight viewership figure to the 7-day total? Well, 75% of 1.58 million is right about 1.2 million, which would leave the 7-day figures at about 2.8 million people, which would mean that for the first time ever, Doctor Who will have dropped below 3 million viewers for an episode. This is a calamity even worse than I ever expected. My schadenfreude, which admittedly truly loves to watch Russell T Davies and Ncuti Gatwa, those arrogant a-holes, it truly loves watching them flounder and fail, but I never thought the show would drop off this far, this fast. The first few episodes of a season are usually among the highest rated after all. Usually, a new show has a bunch of interest at first, some people drop out for the middle part of the season, and then they come back for the season finale if the word of mouth is good. But typically we see a show, and this isn't just true of Doctor Who, mind you, this is all shows, but usually we see a show dip down to their lowest point right in the middle of the show's run, unless this latest episode of Doctor Who bucks the statistical trends from last year. They are going to have hit and obliterated the record for worst rated episode, and then we only have lower numbers to look forward to. The middle of this season is likely going to show a whole new level of despair, the likes of which is calamitous for any hopes that they had of being renewed by Disney. At this point, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'd even go so far as to say that dropping below 2 million overall viewers for the 7-day numbers, I could see that totally being on the table at this point. Maybe not likely, but possible. Anyhow, I'm going to leave it there. Drop your mockery of Doctor Who and the idiots responsible for its ruin into the comment section below, and we will have a good laugh there. Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your Admiral is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.